Hello and welcome to the Honest Hour podcast, the show that encourages you to lead with curiosity and question everything. I'm your host, Jahnay, and each week we'll dive into topics that many shy away from. If any of this interests you, make sure to follow so you don't miss when I drop a new episode. So get comfy while we get curious. A rich man's world. So today I want to start a little different. I would like to read a poem that I found and fell in love with. So here it goes. It's called Halfway There. Whatever happens, you are free to go. Free to peel off what's left of this story and choose another. It is not too late. It is definitely worth the trouble. Remember the story of the lion, lost without his courage, too scared, full of fury, the great wizard standing in the emerald tower, knowing the lion was already brave. So that poem is by Kate J. Bear. I believe that's their Instagram. And I love poetry, number one. It's so beautiful and it is such a way to express the self in such an intimate way. And this poem really could fit into a lot of different things, but it's the intro to today's episode of Grieving Parts of Yourself or just grieving yourself. Mm. Mm. What does it mean to grieve yourself? I hadn't encountered this until I believe sometime last year. And it was such a weird feeling. I felt myself growing and transforming into this new version of me that I I was quite excited for. And also there was a part of me that knew I couldn't continue certain things as they were connected to that part of myself that I had to let go. Mm, mm. I know, y'all, this is a good one. This is a good one. I'm gonna just say that right now, okay? Because grieving the self is so interesting. Like, I remember one day being so connected to that past self. And that past self for me was a girl who went out a lot, a girl who, I consider myself a social drinker, but obviously, if you're going out pretty consistently, that means you're drinking consistently. And just engaging in these activities that did not align with the version of myself that I envisioned. So the me that I envisioned was this girl who went to bed early. She woke up early. I used to be a 5 a.m. girly, okay? I feel like she's slowly creeping back because I love me a 5 a.m. moment. I can't explain it. Well, I can because I'm going to. But at 5 a.m., it seems as though the world is still. And I love stillness. I love quietness. I've worked with kids and there used to be points where the room would just get silent. And I would always say, "Do you guys hear that?" And of course, they got so used to it. They would be like, "Yeah, yeah, it's us not talking." They're like, "You love that." And I'm like, in my head, low key, because them kids You know what? We're not here to talk about the kids, okay? But anyways, used to be a 5 a.m. girly, and that did not align with the girl who went out and did X, Y, and Z, you know? And I'm sure there are ways to find balance in that and people that continue to find balance in those things, which is great. And also for me, it just it wasn't matching up. And still to this day, y'all, I am still shedding and I'm still releasing parts of my past, and I'm not I think I'm more so I've moved through the stages of grief, right? And I'm going to list them for you in case you don't know. So, stages of grief, if you Google it, it comes up in between like 5 and 7. Who knows? But I'm just going to give you a bunch of them, and you take them as you will. So, there's shock, there's denial, pain, guilt, anger, bargaining, which bargaining is pretty much, let's say you have a family member and they're really sick, and you know, pray and say that, God, can you please heal my grandma? I promise I will go to church again. Da, da, da. So that's bargaining. Depression, testing, which this came up a couple of times and I was like, what does testing mean? But basically, it's building a new normal. You're testing out this newness. And then there's processing, you know, processing. And then there's acceptance and hope. And where I am currently, I believe that I'm in a place of acceptance and hope. That's cute. I really don't, I really don't spend too much time in my thoughts as much as I used to lately. So I've gotten back into journaling, which helps it helps organize the mind. And I know there's not many people who can just free journal. I love it because I can just my brain is always moving at like 100 speed. I don't even know if that makes sense, but y'all get it. And it's easy for me to just write. And more times than not, I'm expressing gratitude for just where I am, for waking up, for, having a voice. Literally, I keep it simple. And also, it's a way for me to continue to envision that person that I strive to be. So, highly encourage you how to journal. I know that, someone was just telling me last week that when people say journal, there's no direction for it. But again, I personally feel like if you start off with gratitude, it will get you so far. But sitting and thinking about this and realizing that I've now moved through a lot of those stages and have now I'm in the place of acceptance, and me accepting where I am allows me to be hopeful. And it's just so crazy to be here when at a point I didn't know if I would ever get here. There would be times where I had this version of myself, like I could see her, yeah, but she felt so far away, and I didn't I didn't trust the process. I didn't trust that I would be on this journey that led directly to her. So I feel like I ended up in the place of testing. So again, as a reminder, testing is when you are building a new normal, you're testing out the newness of it all. And for me, that looked like putting myself in situations and around people, and not even necessarily around people because y'all, I be home. I'm such a homebody, and I just constructed my media, let's say that. So on YouTube, for example, which YouTube, mm, I hope they never die, like, die off, because oh my God, the freeness of YouTube. I mean, obviously you have to pay now, you have to pay for everything, but in terms of the amount of information you can get that is just at your fingertips, guys, like, ooh, okay. So I found people that lived the lifestyle I wanted to live, whether it was on Instagram, whether it was YouTube, TikTok, whatever, following everywhere. Okay. And I saw, okay, they got up early, they had morning routines, they had night routines, they, worked out, they ate good, all the things I wanted to start doing for myself. I'm like, how were they doing it all? How were they doing everything and having time? And like, what is the thing? What am I missing? And I was in that space. I was trying what worked for me and what didn't. And again, it took me some time to get here, right? I'm in a place where I can say that, like, yeah, I experienced X, Y, and Z, and now I'm here. So that's why I believe even this platform was created so that way those who are still figuring things out, those who are still in their testing phase, or wherever you are, in whatever phase you are, hopefully I can drop some gems to help you, just encourage you and lift you up to do the things that you would like to do. And I know I briefly spoke about this in, a previous episode of just wanting to have that push. And yeah, just so important to align yourself with whatever version of you want to be. So I'm going to backtrack a little bit and let's talk about the things that aren't so pretty, right? So I wouldn't say I'm at a finish line, but I am comfortable and I'm proud of where I currently am. But before I had to get here, honey had to go through it. We had to do some work. So again, those stages of grief, right? So you have shock and denial, right? So I would say originally, and these are not linear. You can flex and move and turn off all throughout the stages of grief. So don't think that it has to be a certain way. Grief will always look different, it's not the same for every single person, especially when you're grieving the self. That can even look different than how you grieve another, whether it's a being, a thing, but I would say in terms of denial, my denial was no, I can live all these lifestyles at once and I'm cool, it's fine. Like it is what it is. This is what it is. This this is what it is when you were growing up. Because for me, that other version of me, she was just young Jahnay. She was doing her thing, living her life, which is cool. She did her thing. That's cool. And also 26, about to be 27. She just moves a little different. And I had to figure out, okay, can we really do it all? What does that even look like for me? And I would say the guilt came in for me when I would still participate and do things that were connected to the parts of me that I wanted to release, and I'd feel like shit about it. I'd be like, okay, you said you were gonna do this, but you did it. You went ahead and did this, right? And I realized, one, okay, that's holding myself accountable verbally, but in what other ways am I holding myself accountable? Am I aligning, am I aligning with the things that I'm saying. Because you could say things all day long, and I can sit here and point fingers at myself all day long and call that accountability, right? Like, oh, yeah, I know I didn't do it, but at least I know that I didn't do it. All right, but honey, what are we gonna do about that? Right? What what are we gonna do about that? So, accountability and action, right? To me, they're sisters. They're not even cousins, they're sisters, okay? They go hand in hand, okay? They're locked in, right? That's how you have to view that. I don't know if I personally ever experienced anger, but the depression, mm, mm, mm. The depression. Now, I will say, in terms of the stages of grief, like there's so many different types of depression. Like truthfully, there's so many that it's like what came first, the chicken or the egg, right? Was I experienced depression because I was lonely and isolated? Was I experiencing depression because I knew I had to shed a lot of myself and like kind of having an identity crisis, right? It is that bringing about these deep rooted feelings of, I want to say sadness, because again, I don't know if my depression was linked to grief. Um and of course I have, y'all, I have anxiety, I have ADHD, so, there's depression in and throughout that as well. So for me, I would say I experience sadness, not not depression. But it does not mean that what you are experiencing might not be depression. And let's actually talk about that for a hot second. The difference in between sadness and depression. Okay? So when we talk about depression, I'm thinking like clinical depression. Depression that causes you to not care for yourself in the ways you would like to. Some examples would include further pushing yourself into isolation, not having the energy to keep up with hygiene, or not feeding yourself as much and feeling an extreme amount of fatigue, and this lasting for months on end. And you're trying different things and still it feels like nothing works. Okay, so when I talk about depression, that is the depression that I'm talking about. And there's other forms of depression like I mentioned before. And yeah, so obviously we can delve into that if you guys want at a later time. But yeah, so the difference in between like sadness and depression. So that was depression. Sadness, I would say sadness is when your feelings are fleeting, because I've been sad before, and obviously and I've done things that have been able to pull me from that sadness, right? Compared to when I'm depressed, the things that used to make me happy and used to make me feel good no longer do that. Okay? So I hope that's a clear difference in between the two. And we spoke about testing, what it means to find your newness, whatever that means to you. And I would say processing would be really understanding where you are within your grief and figuring out where you would like to go. within your grief. So, for example, when I say figuring out where you are in your grief, right? So we just identified all these different stages. I would say being able to process that would be sitting in that anger, confronting that anger, obviously in a safe space, a safe way, and processing whatever comes up for you. I know I'm using the word to explain the word, and I really, really try not to do that. But when I talk about processing, think about the ways you process information. It's like you input something, it processes it, and then you have the finished product, right? So when you process emotionally and mentally, you're inputting this information, right? So let's say you're analyzing your anger and you know that, like, I'm so angry that I can't be this person, or I'm so angry that life has been taken. And when you're sitting with that and you're letting it build and you're feeling all of that anger, again, in a productive way, not just being angry and that's the end of it, but going through the anger. That is processing when you can go through the emotion. I think many of us stop at the door and we just get so afraid because it feels so big and overwhelming and it's intimidating. Like, I don't want to be angry. I don't want to be insert whatever emotion. So we're standing at the door. And processing would be opening the door right there in that moment. You see it all, right? And you open that door and then you start to walk through it. And it is hard. It is hard because you're facing parts of yourself that you may not want to face. I have these intrusive thoughts sometimes, and I'm like, whoa, I'm not her. I am not that person. I don't like that. And processing would be me sitting down with that. Okay, where's that coming from? Do I really feel that way? What part of me is connected to this? Because I have to be getting something from it if it's coming up, right? All of that, that's processing. And of course, we get to acceptance and hope. I feel like that was such a lovely ending. Like, um, so acceptance, man. I want to say this because acceptance might sound one way, but I definitely want to clarify that. So when we are in a place of acceptance, it does not mean that it's, how do I put this into words? So when you're accepting of something, you've come to peace with it. Doesn't mean that you're over it, because I personally believe it's really when you're grieving a loved one or a loss, that within the grieving process, there's not necessarily an end, right? You get to this place of acceptance and hope, not to say that you'll be grieving forever, but once you establish that new meaning, then you take on that meaning and that's how you move forward. So, for example, have lost my nana, I've lost my aunt, and the ways in which I keep them alive is it's really these little things that me and my family know about. And I know that whenever I speak and I utilize that language, or with my Aunt Viola, so she would always be happy Monday, happy whatever day it is. Today's Monday, so happy Monday for me. Happy whatever day it is for y'all, okay? But that reminds me of her, and that allows me to still be connected to my aunt and my Nana. Nana was just a chef, right? So for me personally, the more that I cook, it makes me feel like I'm continuing, continuing a legacy. And this may not make any sense to anyone else, but it doesn't matter because it's not for anyone else. It's for me, and this feels right to me. So in terms of your grief, figuring out that new meaning for you and the ways you would like to keep things alive, you know? I really enjoyed this episode, and if there's any part of this that you would like me to talk about in more depth, you already know. Just let me know. If you're hearing this, that means you've listened to the entire episode. And for that, I want to thank you. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends or leave a review wherever you're listening. To stay updated with the Honest Hour podcast, you can follow me on Instagram at The Honesty Pod. And if there are specific topics you want me to cover in future episodes, please let me know. Thank you again, and I hope to see you back here next week. A rich man's world.